Chess, nonsense, and analysis. Hi, dear viewer. So today we saw first game, the first game of the in the final of the Women's World Cup 2025, and the final between Divya Deshmukh and Khoneru Humpy. So let's jump into it. And this was the first game. Deshmukh played D4. This was already a little bit of a surprise to me because she's an E4 player as well. So D4, it must have come as a little surprise to Humpy. Okay, D5 is played C4. This is the Queen's Gambit. Of course, the main idea of the Queen's Gambit is to remove the central pawn, black central pawn from control of the center, which Khoneru Humpy accepted. Now the Queen's Gambit accepted. What does white get in return? A number of things. We'll also talk what black gets in return very quickly. White gets control of the center because white now has two pawns. And white will try to use the C file because this rook will eventually move to C1 and try to influence on the C file. Now, the question is, but why does black allow this? What does black get in return? Well, the answer is very simple. Black gets directly a hit into the center, and that means that black gets to immediately have pressure against white's central pawn, and black is going to chip away at this pawn. Black is going to try and play two moves. Black is going to try to play c5, or black can also try to play e5. So these are the two moves that black would try to play to try and attack white's pawn in the center. So okay, the battle is set. E4. These moves have been played before, of course. The idea is to take back the pawn. White directly hits in the center with e5. So now if black takes on e5, the position is going to be very logical. What I mean, simple, maybe for black to play. Black will play knight c6, castle long, the e5 pawn will be in trouble. Of course, black's c4 pawn will be lost as well. And then, but black has got no problems really in such a position because, black will finish the development very quickly and attack the center. So if white wants to have some kind of an advantage, white has to hold, of course, the center. And now notice one thing, dear viewer, once e5 has been played, it's a fantastic position. Once e5 has been played, the game becomes very dynamic. Why? Because now this a2 to g8 diagonal all of a sudden plays a role. Because if you think about e4, e5 openings, like King's Gambit, Scotch Gambit, all kinds of gambits, this diagonal, especially if the bishop can turn up on c4, becomes very dangerous, you see. So now black does not have the option of going back down and playing e6. Black is sort of going in. So the position has got that potential to be very, very sharp, which becomes the case in this situation. Check, knight c3, knight f6. Why these moves are important? They're important because of the reasons that I explained. Black wants to quickly escape from the center. So the threat now is to play knight takes e4. But in such positions, dear viewer, it's not important to defend these positions because, this pawn, because the overall strategy dictates that it's all about speed. So knight takes e5 is a very nice defense. Why is this well, it's a defense because notice now that amongst other things, there's a possible queen a4 check. Because queen a4 check, let's say in this position here, a queen a4 check would not necessarily have been too bad. Shall we put it that way for black? Maybe black can play knight c6 and and try to sort of escape from this position. Um, so yeah, it's very sharp already. The position is extremely sharp, and I'm looking already like at some crazy variations. Like for example, knight c6, d5. Can I play b5? Like go extremely aggressive here. I'm not 100% sure, but I think maybe some b5s, queen takes b5, rook b8. Can I do this? Queen takes c6, bishop d7. The queen must move to a6. And it looks to me like a very dangerous position that one can find themselves in. I'm not sure if the queen will be able to move out. I'm busy calculating Divya bishop b5, queen takes, but the queen moves out this way, right? Who knows what's happening? But I mean, it looks extremely sharp and it looks extremely dangerous. But one has to be really prepared against this. But nonetheless, Deshmukh decides to go for knight takes e5. b5 is now played. Bishop e2 and bishop b7 is played. This is very interesting because we can tell, I was just trying to show you a few variations that you have to be really well prepared for this position. But we can tell now that Khoneru Humpy is not necessarily in her preparation now. As you can see, there's just a lot of preparation. There was a game between two very strong players when knight takes e4 was played. And I think that game went something like castles in this position. And then black took pawn takes. I think it was a Nepomniachtchi game, if I'm not mistaken. Queen e1, knight takes e2, queen takes, and black castled, white played bishop a3. Something like this. Because of course, if you play rook e8, I can play queen f3, attacking f7, and at the same time attacking a8. In that game, I think the exchange was sacrificed. The rook, some like I don't know, bishop b7 was played, and then the rook was captured. But it was a very sharp game. And well, in that game, black went on to win, by the way. But of course, we expect that there must have been an improvement on Deshmukh's side. But anyway, Humpy Khoneru did not take on e4, but played bishop b7. This brings now a new element to the position because remember, all of Deshmukh's preparations would have been to knight takes e4, right? Possibly some innovation somewhere. And once bishop b7 is played, so both players are now getting to a position where they haven't really prepared as much, right? But still, in terms of type of position, Deshmukh has an advantage because she has been working with typical positions, right? Anyway, it gets very interesting. She castles, and Humpy goes on and takes the pawn. A very dangerous operation, should we say, because the king is in the center, and the black squares are very weak, and there's no black square bishop. So bishop a3 suggests itself. Yeah, bishop a3 is a very logical move to keep the king in the center. Now, dear viewer, you start to realize in such situations that it's important to know classical games. This bishop a3, it may not make sense if you did not, for example, see, and let me go all the way back. If you did not see more games like, for example, classical games with Greco, where this used to happen, right? Now, I'm going to explain what's happening here. This used to be the old way, like, right? Where it was played like knight c3, knight takes e4, castles, and black used to take knight takes c3. Of course, later on, it was seen that it's better to take bishop takes c3 and d5, right? But knight takes c3, pawn takes c3, bishop takes c3, and bishop a3 was played by Greco. So, when you see this idea, Greco used to play like this in 1640, around there, where The king would be kept in the center and the bishop on a3. The rest of the material is not that important. What is important is just to keep the king in the center and to keep bringing the pieces as quickly as possible. Now, if you see that, and we now look at this game that happened today, and Deshmukh's reasons, especially, here that she plays bishop a3, you can tell that the concept is familiar to her, and hence she feels that this is the right approach, right? Even though most probably for her it's like a new position, but she feels, and we also, when we're looking at the game, we feel that it is black who's under pressure because of that king that's in the center and to stay there for quite a while. What an exciting game. So knight to 6 is understandable by Humpy. She wants to block the diagonal so that she can quickly exit with the king. Bishop f3 is played, but now things are not as simple because you see, behind the bishop is the rook. So if you take on f3, queen takes f3, takes the rook. If you castle, bishop takes b7, if knight takes, the exchange is there. So there are some issues all the time. So now we see this awkward move, queen c8. It's awkward because the queen doesn't want to get there, but the problems in the middle game are there. Now, what was suggested? She played knight takes c4, which is very interesting and very creative. But bishop g4 was also very logical, isn't it? Because bishop to g4, I attack the queen, and it's just very awkward for the opposition. Queen d8, and now bishop f3. This was the way that it should have gone, and it actually is a much stronger option. No, wait, queen c8, bishop, no, rook b1. Yeah. So instead of this bishop g4, rook b1, I guess, is the stronger option because now the pawn on b5 is hanging. Yeah. No, they just repeated that. Yes, this one is the stronger option. The pawn on b5 is hanging, and maybe to play something like that, right? And so this was suggested, but as you can see, the variations are not that easy. Nonetheless, it's easy to sort of say, well, this was better, but I think what was played was also very logical. She plays in this position. So let's go back. So bishop f3, and then she took on c4, Deshmukh. Right, what's happening here in this situation? Well, she's opening the e-file, right? She's opening the e-file, and she's going to play check. So now the king has to decide where to go. So king f8 was played. They say king d8 is preferable. So in this position, we're having white has sacrificed a piece, but black's position, especially the king, is quite difficult. So bishop takes b7. This position, I just want to explain something. The engine with the calculation, let's say queen e2 was better. It's very difficult to calculate because there are so many variations to calculate in these positions, right? And yeah, takes b7 looks logical, and queen e2, threatening checkmate. So the threat is just simply queen e8 checkmate. So knight goes to c6, defending, and d5. Very, very dangerous position, looks dangerous. So she gives back the piece, rook b1, and then takes on d6, check. Pawn takes. So we reach this position. And what is happening here? Well, the thing that is happening here is that white is still in charge here because black's pieces are not coordinating. The rooks are not defending and so on. So rook to b4, attacking the pawn, rook to c8, and now check. So that was the idea of rook c4, yeah? a7 pawn is now hanging. White has got a pass pawn on the A, and black's king is not the safest in the world. She finds a very nice maneuver. She plays rook h6, bringing the rook into activity, h4 and g3, rook e3, and king g2. I think that white is still better here because white has got better prospects to attack. So that is hence Deshmukh also felt this way. There was a suggestion to repeat the move. She decides, no, I want to play on. Because, you can tell, I mean, the rook is going to go to b7, and the pawn on h5 yeah, makes the position not so secure. The rook on g6, it means that there is no g6 as well to defend this pawn on h5. Some interesting position. Rook f6 attacks f2. So rook goes back to b2, queen f1, rook e2, and now a very strong move, rook c5, blocking the way of the queen uh, as a way of defending, and also with ideas of rook f5, or also rook d5 and rook d1 in some positions. Position is very tense, so check, and she plays f4 just in time to bring the queen back. Yeah, one has the idea now that the position should be completely equal. You know, both sides, kings are relatively weak. And so let's start here with this rook b5. Of course, if you take the rook, uh, black can perpetual check immediately, no, like this, and you cannot get out. So check, and then she takes now, and it was then a draw. There was a lot happening in this game. And I think that, opening wise, Humpy was surprised, and she had but she's very tough. As she's a very, very strong defender. And so we've got a very nice match going on here, because Deshmukh is a good attacker, and Humpy is comfortable defending. So let's see what will happen tomorrow. So tomorrow, Humpy has got the small little advantage because she plays with the white pieces, and Deshmukh must, of course, defend. But some situations are very tricky, because I feel that, according to me, my prediction about tomorrow's game is that Humpy will not push too much. She won't. I think she will, with the white pieces, she will look if she can get an advantage. And if she does manage to surprise Deshmukh, then she will press, of course. But I think if the game is very small advantage for her, she will most probably not take too many risks, and rather than go for the playoffs. So a lot that's still going to happen, a lot of excitement. And yeah, let's see what will happen. So yeah, till tomorrow. You know, I cannot wait till the game tomorrow. And yeah, so by the way, the playoff for third place, which is an all Chinese affair, ended also in a draw. So yeah, let's see what is going to happen tomorrow. So please do share, like, subscribe, and also comment. Give us some few variations that you may think may have helped in the position. Anyway, till next time, all I will say for now is checkmate.